The paper that I presented, the second paper, the one I presented in English, which was co-authored by Professor Wilson Vamoela, is entitled Counterterrorism, Local Cultures and the Stabilization of the Sahel for Africa's Emergence Toward Structurally Transformative Grand Strategy. The idea is to connect the three questions, the question of counterterrorism, the stakes of emergence, and local culture, which means indigenizing counterterrorism, indigenizing the war against Salafi Takfiri extremism, which is the narrow and very practical definition of terrorism that we have chosen for this paper, which means that is not a theoretical definition of terrorism, it is a very practical one. We target Takfiri, Salafi, extremist violence. That is how we define terrorism in this context. So how to fight it? We suggest that we have to look for a third way, because the first two are failed for the first, insufficient for the second. The first is strategic counterterrorism, which is basically fighting extremist violence, radical extremism, with military means involving security forces. That has proven not to work because violence alone does not work. And the literature has developed, and now grand strategy as understood by the contemporary but also classical strategists following Edward Ludwig or even all the others that have conceived of grand strategy. Basically, it involves more means, diplomatic, political, economic, as well as strategic counterterrorism. Well, that is accurate, but it does not touch on the sedimented culture that happens to support terrorism. In order to touch that aspect, that part that could be called infrastructure, cultural infrastructure, you need to in fact transform that culture. And if Africa is to emerge, it is that structure that is going to be economically transformed. But if you need to use that transformation, if you need to really defeat Salafi Takfiri extremism that builds on that culture, you need to transform it. That's what we call structurally transformative grand strategy, which means that all the components of grand strategy are going to be mobilized toward emergence that structurally transforms not only the economy but also the culture, so that the cultures that so far have supported Salafi Takfiri extremism are actually going to be reoriented so that they become assets in Africa's emergence, as well as co-opt or capture the mentality of the people, the culture of the people, and reorient it against terrorism. That's what we call structurally transformative counterterrorism. It has not been experienced yet. African states are thinking about emergence on the one hand and counterterrorism on the other, even within the framework of grand strategy. We think that we should join them within the framework of a structurally transformative counterterrorism.